Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our January 2016 City of New Ulm Park and Rec Commission meeting. It's cold out there, but pleasant inside. So thanks again for everyone making the commitment to attend today's meeting. We thought it might be beneficial to start with a welcome and introductions. We have a new commissioner with us for the first meeting. So maybe if we can, Karen, could I start on this end and we'll go around, and if you could introduce yourself and maybe just something interesting on why you're on the Park and Rec Commission.
My name's Karen Zungel. I'm retired from 3M. Born in New Ulm. Probably gonna die here too, but it just, I realized there were parks, but I didn't realize the extent that went into maintaining them, and this is a good way to find out.
Thanks, Karen.
I'm Melanie Griebel. I have 6 kids, so that's a pretty good reason why I was interested in joining this. Stay-at-home mom, soon to be working, but that's pretty much it.
Good, thanks, Melanie. I'm Ruth Ann Webster. I'm on the Park and Rec as the City Council representative. So thank you for your service.
I'm Gene Sleddahl, retired from Martin Luther College and an avid user of the Park and Rec facilities.
Jean Prochnick, obviously. I went to school with Leroy, so I know him.
Oh.
And I am Auditor Treasurer at Brown County, and this has been real enlightening to me and all the fun things we've gotten to do because of it, just going to see new facilities and getting ideas for New Ulm and what we can make better here. So it's cool. Welcome.
Yes, welcome again, Leroy. My name's Toby Fryer. I work at the Medical Center and have been chair of the Park and Rec Commission for a couple years. Father of 3, so obviously as a family we like to enjoy the Park and Rec system, and as many have shared, while we have such a collection of assets here within the Park and Rec system, I think we're all just interested in how do we maintain all the great things that we have to offer, and where could we improve as a community for this city and as this region. So thanks for joining us.
Hey, Terry. Terry Baumgart. I've been in New Ulm for 20-some years working at MBTL with your wife. I'm a bicycler, and so most of my interest in Park and Rec is in the outdoor facilities. So,
I'm Chris Forwick. I'm an analyst at 3M, and I've been on the commission for, it's my 2nd year now, and we've got 3 kids. We make extensive use of the park, so.
I'm Cheryl Corman. I'm the Assistant Director for the City of New Ulm's Park and Rec Department. I've been there 20 years. Sorry.
Leroy, thanks for joining us. Tom Schmitz, Park and Recreation Director for 10.5 years now, and I thank all the commissioners for their volunteer service and commitment to our community. So welcome.
Okay.
I'm Leroy Floor. I work for the Postal Service. I guess I just decided one day I had said something to Bob that how people get on there, and I guess as it turned out, he called me back. That's about it.
Well, thanks to the mayor for listening and the follow-through. Appreciate being able to have a full commission again here and not missing a beat. So look forward to your contributions, Leroy. We got a great group, a great commission here. First order of business that we have today would be to review and approve the agenda for today's meeting as was sent out in our packet. Any additions or comments on the agenda?
Move adoption.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Also included in the packet for our review were the minutes from the December 14th meeting. I hope everyone had a chance to review those. Any comments or suggested changes on the minutes? And thank you to Cheryl and others for the detailed recap of the discussion. There are no recommended changes. I guess I would look for a motion to approve the minutes.
I approve.
I'll second. Karen and Jean. Okay?
Karen, motion. Jean, second. Any more discussion on the meeting minutes from December 14th? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 on our agenda was the December 15th Department Activity Report as submitted by Director Schmitz in the department. Hopefully, again, everyone had a chance to review it. Would be looking to the commission for any questions, comments, or discussion items on the December activity report.
I was wondering if we had pictures of all those mustaches for Movember. I'm just joking.
Was there a contest?
Yes, there was.
There was?
Yes, and I think it's on our Facebook page, some information on that, led by our programming division, Joey Schugel and Bryce Bachman. We had a month-long effort for men's health, and I think it was successful.
Nice to have fun for a good cause. Any other discussion items for the December activity report? Hearing none, that will be filed with our meeting minutes today. On to item number 5, City Council meeting recap. So there was a meeting on the 15th of December and January 5th. Director Schmitz, any comments or updates?
Yes, thank you, Chair Fryer and Commissioners. As usual, 2 City Council meetings take place in between our monthly commission meetings. The December 15th council meeting saw them adopting the 2016 budget. And then in January, the first meeting in January was the 5th. They had the commission appointments for Chair Fryer to continue for another year, and Commissioner Slededall to step in as vice chair, and appointed a new commissioner, Leroy Floor. Also, they approved a temporary liquor permit for the junior hockey franchise that's planning to play a league game here Saturday evening, February 6th. And also approved the action for increasing the number of bicycling routes throughout the community and authorizing placement of bicycle racks in the downtown area. That was the council action over the past month related to the Park and Rec Commission.
Okay, any questions for Director Schmitz or Commissioner Webster related to City Council activity? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you for the updates and reports. Under old business, one major item, the Renew activity related to the Reinvest New Ulm local sales tax reauthorization. And I guess I thought maybe we could divide this up into 3 subcategories under the old business. One I'd be interested in, I know we had some conversation on the way back, but to open it up for any other comments, observations, thoughts around our site visits to Maple Grove, Waconia, and Chaska. So a number of the commissioners in December had the opportunity to leave the community and go see facilities in those 3 communities as they relate to some ideas we had for Park and Rec proposals related to the Renew Committee. So that'd be one, be interested. Second, I can give a brief update on our last Renew Committee activity, so you all know kind of what's happening at that committee if you're not following along online. And then third, there were a lot of documents included in the packet related to draft proposals for letters of submission to the Renew Committee, and we'll look for review of those and discussion. But if we could start with kind of a site recap, would kind of turn it over to my fellow commissioners who went along on the trip. Just observations you had, thoughts, feedback on as we think about future direction for our Park and Rec system. What did you like? What would you hope we would look at here for our community? Did it solidify anything as we're doing our planning for our Renew proposals? Not everyone talk at once right now. Okay?
Well, I truly enjoyed the visit, first of all. I thought that each facility had something very unique and cool. Many things had to be scaled down for the size of our community, I would guess. But in using, we went back to the facility, one of them on the New Year, and took my family there. And it was just a hit. The indoor playground probably was one of the neatest things. We were at Chaska, so that's the smallest of the 3 as I remember it, and yet was so entertaining. And I remember talking about when we did the dog park, how people gathered and talked. Well, whoever was in there, you certainly had conversations with them as adults. I just thought it was a really neat experience. We used the track, we used the basketball court, the kids used the pool. 5 o'clock came really fast, 4 hours of entertainment, and one very tired child when we were done. So that's what it was about, and that's what it was meant to be. So I think I saw the value in going there. Yeah, we paid a price. I would have rather done it locally, you know, if we'd had it, but it was a good experience to find out if it really is fun, and it was, and it appealed to all the age groups. There was something for the whole family to do in one day. And I think that's a nice facility. I saw that in many of them. I like the fact that some of them had rooms that seemed to be rented out for music lessons or things where you would drop your children off. It gave parents an opportunity to not sit in a car and wait, but to go in and maybe do something that might be healthy for themselves. So I thought every one of them had something that would be wonderful to see here in New Ulm.
Just a brief comment to support what Gina said, that it really opened my eyes as to the possibilities of what can be done. And I've not been aware of all these different kind of opportunities that exist in some of the communities, and that it would be great if we can have at least some of those come to fruition here.
And for a brief recap, it wasn't in the packet, but of what we toured, we had a first visit was Maple Grove, is that correct?
Yes, Maple Grove Community Center, and then their dome, their winter seasonal artificial turf dome. And then we went through Chaska and finished up at Waconia. Chaska Community Center and Waconia Community Center.
So they all had varying degrees of water parks with features for small kids and big kids. They all had the unique feature of an indoor playground. They varied in size and a scope of all of them, but they all had kind of an indoor playground for kids. And what Jean pointed out, they also had access to rooms for other community services and programs there. And then the fitness centers, I think we also took a peek at all of those, of how they're organized and integrated together. The cardio and the weight training were also important to take a look at. So for those that didn't make the trip, we saw an indoor, basically like an indoor football field under a roof with artificial turf surface, and then those aquatic centers and playgrounds. Any other comments? Would want to make sure we can have those shared today.
Can I add another one?
Please.
I noticed one of the things too was that there were so many different age groups integrated into these same facilities. I liked there was the one I peeked around the corner. I think it was in Maple Grove, where they had a teen center, and they had pool tables and video games and pub tables and chairs and concessions and that kind of thing, all in that room. And I thought, geez, wouldn't that be cool? I mean, when you think about it, you gather with some friends and then say, let's go play a game of basketball, or let's go and swim, or whatever it is you might want to do. It's all right there. The same with the seniors. The seniors were gathering and stuffing envelopes or whatever they were doing, probably for the park facility or maybe for something they were promoting. I have no idea. But they were in that building, and so all these age groups are gathered under one roof, and I know that's really probably not something in the scope that maybe we were looking at, but I really liked that interaction that I saw, that all age levels were welcome and felt a part of that community.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments from commissioners or staff related to our site visits? Okay.
No, nothing.
Okay. The second part of the three-part old business item was just a brief recap on our meeting that we had at the Renew Committee level. And we met last week on Tuesday evening, I believe it was, and had two main agenda items. One was we reviewed some work that city administration had done along with one of our commissioners on financial projections as it relates to the sales tax. And again, we've had this question here. We've been interested in about how much do we think could be available for capital investment related to a reauthorization of the sales tax. So they put together some different variables and financial models, try to come up with a range based on whether we have growth or no growth and the effect of target closing and where interest rates could be and the length of the reauthorization, all these different models to kind of come up with a range we could use at least as guideposts so that we're not totally understating what could be the capital investment amount or overstating. And I would tell you today, and it's always subject to change based on what's going on in New Ulm and the future retail environment, but today I think our committee, Renew Committee, and have felt like the range we would use today is about 13 to 15 or 16 million in potential capital investment. That if you go too much higher today based on assumptions, we might be taking on a little too much risk in that forecasting, and if you went too much the other way, we might be too conservative and not maximizing what opportunity we would have for investment. Any questions on that item of business that we had at the Renew Committee? And as your representative to the Renew Committee, want to make sure everyone kind of feels you're receiving the information you need to help then guide me or inform me as the representative out of the Park and Rec Commission.
Toby,
Yes.
would it be fair to say that you were being told that these estimates were conservative, that they're not putting too rosy a picture together?
Yeah, I think the intent has been to kind of out of the gate here to make sure we have a conservative projection, that we're not building in too much growth into the plan. So I think that range is starting from a conservative standpoint, but as we know in the last month or two, you know, things happen in a community too like Target that we don't want to be probably facing any big downturn and then being left not being able to fund the debt obligations that we would have.
Thank you.
A question regarding, I'm assuming that it would be the city council that would finally determine the amount to target.
Yeah, the Renew Committee was established just to bring a recommendation to the city council. You're correct. So envisioning in the future, assuming we would recommend projects and reauthorization, that hasn't been determined yet, but we would recommend projects and kind of an approximate amount, and then it's up to the city council to accept that recommendation, modify that recommendation, or decide otherwise.
And just one other thing, I think we also, at that point, when we know we've got a target, then we would be, the city council would be in contact with the actual bond council, you know, with the company that actually issues the bonds, and then they'll sort of have a second look at the figures and the assumptions and give us an idea whether or not we're in the ballpark. So we'll have professional advice.
And likely the bond issue itself wouldn't happen until maybe the earliest 2018, could be 2021, you know, a range there. So it's not in the next 6 months. So as we know, a lot of conditions could be changing over the next 3 years to 5 year time period. The second item that we discussed at the Renew Committee was trying to develop right now some sort of evaluation criteria for the likely proposals that will be coming in. So imagine we get 10 proposals, 15 proposals, how many ever it is. How will we evaluate those proposals and then ultimately prioritize those proposals? So we decided it would probably be good use of time over the January and February period to develop those criteria and that system or model, so that at the end of March or the first part of April, when the proposals are kind of on the table, that we're not then trying to figure out, well, how should we prioritize these 15 and what makes the most sense. We're going to use the next 2 to 3 months to build that model, kind of test it. And I guess I could share it with you today, and would be looking for feedback maybe today, for surely at the next meeting. Just some of the categories that have been put on the table right now for possible evaluation for criteria. One would be safety for the community. Another would be economic development opportunities for the community. A third would be health and fitness impact. A fourth would be local benefit to the community, broadly defined. Regional benefit, the financial kind of performance of a project as it relates to the city budget. So would a project, require a significant amount of operating investment from the city in the annual budget? So that would be one more criteria. And then does it kind of impact a diverse kind of stakeholder group in the community? So Jean, you were just mentioning of all ages represented at a center like that. Do these projects that would be proposed, do they have diverse impact? Those are, I don't think that's maybe the final list, but for the first meeting, those were ones that were kind of put on the draft model for consideration, and then we're thinking about weighting of those. So, does safety and economic development have the same weight, or should one be kind of weighted more so within our model than the other? Any initial feedback for me on those criteria?
Do you think that the regional impact would be a stronger one in that we need people to come into this community and spend money here so that we can pay for them? I mean,
Yeah,
I'd like that to lean to the top a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'm sure there'll be discussion on that, but one, we've heard kind of loud and clear from our legislatures and others that they see the sales tax, given that it's not entirely funded by only our community, that it impacts and shares benefit with regional communities. So I think from that standpoint, it's important, and I think you also bring up a good point. If you don't have regional people coming to utilize services, the funding of the sales tax may not be as strong as it could be. Any other comments or questions related to the Renew Committee updates?
Well, and this is hard to put into a category, but I just sort of think about, are we duplicating services?
Yeah.
Is this something that has some sort of unique contribution, or something that is sort of a new trend, or something that is something that we haven't had before, as opposed to putting in yet another, what is it we have a lot of? Grocery store or something like that, something, but
I think that's a
something
good
that's
one,
sort of cutting edge, sort of maybe that. But like I said, I'm not sure exactly how to say that in a simple sentence, but the uniqueness of it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair Fryer and Commissioners, one question I might have. I wasn't able to attend last week. I was out of town. But the $13 to $16 million estimate for capital development, was there also taken into consideration with those calculations funding a repair and replacement account?
Yeah, there was in the models, that was, thank you for bringing that up, another one of the factors or variables. And I think that's one of the variables, that capital amount probably goes up or down based on the appetite for the repair and maintenance funding included there.
Yeah.
But there was a line item in there for repair and maintenance funding.
That's good. I support that.
Whether it's ever enough, we don't know that, but it was acknowledged as being important to our modeling. Well, now back to kind of the information included in the packet, if everyone's good with those updates. There have been proposals included, and on your screens there you have a commission action form that has some consideration for various proposals that have been included. And again, these are related to, there were two phases for the Renew Committee. One is a letter of intent with some high-level and a brief summarized information, and then in another 2 months be requiring a full proposal, more of a thorough account for kind of the projections, benefit, need, et cetera. Look to Director Schmitz. Do you want to walk us through each of these and kind of what's intended for the commission today?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Fryer and Commissioners. The department has spent the past month here putting together initial draft of these documents. I think we realize when they're due. They're coming up due in just a couple of weeks, the 26th. For the 5 elements that you approved last month, the Indoor Aquatic Center, Indoor Artificial Turf, Indoor Playground, Mata Civic Center expansion, and then Johnson Miller Athletic Complex improvements. In addition to that, I'd like to speak at some point about an additional thought that the department and others has had at this initial stage, that making sure we don't forget to put something in that we wanted to consider down the road, and that is the partial implementation of the Herman Heights Master Plan, which would be a 6th possible item coming from the commission. So in walking through those, you have in the packet, the highlighted items are the ones that are required in this first initial proposal. And with the Indoor Aquatic Center, I discussed the need about year-round, indoor, multi-generational, inclusive aquatic center water park that is not found within the region. Lots of different benefits, as we've discussed, multi-generational, intergenerational activity, year-round activity, health and fitness, with a number of different amenities that are not provided within the community or the region yet, including our indoor swimming pool. And so I don't think I'm just going to touch on some of these. I'm not going to read through it entirely or go verbatim. But we're in the process of evaluating the status of our existing indoor pool. We retained an expert firm to analyze and review our existing indoor pool. We anticipate that report coming before the end of January. So that will help us to kind of flush this out a little bit more if we're talking about demolition of our existing indoor pool and to create another a new indoor facility, or if we can maintain that and service that and add an additional expansion, additional body or 2 of water, including the 0 depth for all abilities and ages. Some of these different amenities that are not found within the region. An improved existing lap swim area, lazy river component, sauna steam room, high elevation flume slide. Some of the things that we've seen on our tour and we've witnessed in other aquatic centers. So you can see the items that are not highlighted are items that we've got to finish completing over the next 2 months with making sure that there are not overlapping needs, what other collaborations are available, what sort of operation and maintenance expenses are involved, staffing, and so on. The second draft proposal is...
Could we just
Yes.
take a pause
Let's
after
pause
each
there.
one? Just,
Good.
I would like to make sure if we have questions or comments on the first proposal, which is the Aquatic Center Water Park,
Yes.
we can have some discussion. There's just a couple items, and maybe it was more just me. One, when we say no other indoor year-round multi-generational water parks in the region, what I would wonder is how we classify Lake Crystals. Some of us made a site visit there, and there were some features of that I think support some need in the region. Now I'm guessing we may have our own ideas of what could be enhanced or elevated from there, but the no other water park exists in our region. I don't know how exactly we're defining our region, and maybe that could be helpful for our proposals. But just I don't know how many others like Lake Crystal exist out there. I just don't have a sense of how many of those facilities in between Sioux Falls and Rochester and the Twin Cities exist. I don't know. But I know Lake Crystals at least has
Yeah, we drove there.
Some
Can't be
appeal.
that far away.
Yes, when I put that in there, I did put it in there as a bit of a talking point because we haven't described our region geographically. Certainly can be edited. Yes.
I guess I have my kind of thought of the region, but maybe that's a point for just a moment here to, Gene, you were just mentioning you were driving to Chaska for daytime use of a facility like this. And where could we envision people coming from if we decided to develop one? And what would be our kind of target region if the Renew Committee's asking the Park and Rec? Well, kind of show us on a map or describe where you think the kind of the regional use will come from.
Well, and sort of in a similar way, I know that Cara Knuff, the retail services specialist, has some idea of because of her work, where people come to shop. You know, and it's basically more to the west than it is to the east. That might help us decide where we're likely to draw people from.
In a similar way, Ruth Ann, we look at that from a medical services standpoint also, you know, of where do people come from to New Ulm, and where can we envision some of these patterns to kind of mimic the retail, the healthcare, the professional services, et cetera. And I guess my thought is you kind of go up to Highway 19, and there's some point where you go north where things start to shift maybe more toward the Southwest Metro or the Hutchinson area, but I for surely would include Highway 19 and then going far out past Redwood for surely, and coming down to kind of the Tracy area and maybe an hour and 15 west of here, and looping back down to St. James and the Wyndham area, and coming back over. Wouldn't include Mankato maybe in that definition. Depends for which proposal here. I mean, the next one maybe so, but maybe not this one. But I think that could be helpful if we said, well, in that region there's 60,000, 70,000 people. It's not just the New Ulm community. That would all be within an hour of day tripping to New Ulm for use of facilities like what we're describing here.
I find it interesting that we didn't travel to Mankato to see any facilities over there. I don't know, anybody know what, well, probably Tom, you might be aware, what does Mankato have for facilities as far as the kind of things we're looking at?
Mankato has a YMCA, and they do not have a city-owned rec facility like ours. There's a YMCA that has some of the amenities. It's been a few years since I've been in there, so I know they have an indoor pool.
And they've got an active swim club too.
I think use of it might be limited.
Isn't it membership or not?
It might
Somebody
be.
said that.
It might be. I know that when we host meetings in New Ulm, our consortium is Southern Minnesota. We get this all the time about how we don't realize how lucky we are to have all the facilities that we have. Because some of these facilities, they're either broken up, you know, like here, they have one, or they have one or two of the things, where a lot of ours is in one facility, or two, you know, mainly, well, we have three main facilities, but a lot of it is right at the rec center. So that's really more attractive because you can come, it's a one-stop shop. Like you shared with your family, you went to the facility for the day and there was something for everyone.
So maybe in contrast with shopping, maybe Mankato might be considered part of the area of, that could be considered into the
Right.
area that might be drawn here.
Their community ed brings buses over to use our rec center, or to use our pool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I just think this regional concept, we might want to get specific on each proposal, and maybe that's the full proposal, Tom, rather than the initial draft. But I could see how these regions would maybe be modified from one project to the next.
Sure.
The water park
Yeah,
may
that's
be
interesting.
maybe a certain region, and the turf-based facility may be another, and the Johnson Park may be
Third.
totally different. So, any other discussion or recommendations on the water park proposal? Okay, let's move on to the second one, which was the turf-based facility.
Yes, let's see here if I've got to the right page. Here we go. Again, this is we're not aware of a regional facility within our region, an indoor year-round, multi-generational, inclusive, artificial turf-based facility, multi-use facility. That's a mouthful. But again, we're basically talking about a multi-use indoor facility year-round with artificial turf-based surface. And we're going, on Wednesday, we're going to Austin to see their new one with a monthly Southern Minnesota Park and Rec meeting, which is also a co-op between the school district and the city there. Similar to what we saw in Maple Grove, the seasonal air-supported dome. But this is I want to focus on the multi-use aspect of a facility like this. It will serve not only sports and athletics, but it can serve a variety of other users, potentially even the business community with trade shows, special events, and other activities. It'll increase the amount of indoor dry floor space that we have in the community. As we all know, that March is a busy time for change at the Civic Center when ICE leaves and the farm show, camper show, home show, and other events come in there. If there's a possibility to expand those or augment them by use in a facility such as this, there could be, state and regional hockey tournaments every single year hosted in our community. So I think that the multi-use aspect, which was important in our Civic Center back in the year 2000 and back in '99, I think is an important element to keep in mind with this. Also, not only for individual athletic and use, but also associations and schools. The area high schools and colleges would certainly be interested in buying time at this facility, at least during the winter months, we know that. The walkability aspect of it, where you can have a walking area or a walking track surrounding the perimeter, provides us more opportunities for that activity. I've mentioned some of the other uses: softball, baseball, football, soccer, track and field, golf, lacrosse, and others. Various organizations and schools and groups that would be interested in purchasing time in a facility such as that. With this, with these initial proposals, and even down the road, we don't necessarily have to paint ourselves into a corner by saying this is exactly where we're going to put it, and this is the exact, size of it, so to speak. I made sure that we didn't put that in this initial proposal. It could be that, the best location is down the road a little bit as far as a decision on where that could take place. Certainly, there's a possibility of some of this taking place with an expansion at the existing recreation center. But at this initial step, I wasn't certain that we wanted to put that kind of detail into the proposal. Any thoughts or comments on the multi-use indoor artificial turf-based facility?
One comment I would have is, let's just say, okay, we're proposing 3 or 4 different ideas. And let's say that the Renew Committee opted to choose 2 of the 4 for consideration, further consideration. And let's just say this was one that was ousted, and now we don't have an indoor walking track. I mean, we've still got the one down at the arena. Will we be able to adjust things so that we can still incorporate some of our ideas? Maybe the indoor playground doesn't go, and yet that's really an important thought process for this commission. Can we still move that to like a different one? You know what I'm saying? you know, that it doesn't go away completely. You know, the outdoor, the bubble facility might be a tough sell maybe. I don't know. But if it is, there's some things in here that are truly valid for me, I like, but maybe because there's so many other projects that are gonna be considered, something has to go by the wayside. I don't wanna lose some of the features if we can still incorporate them in something else we have. Is that fair?
So what I'm hearing is maybe, as part of our kind of strategic planning process, can we pursue other funding sources? I mean, the
Right.
local option sales tax is one.
Right.
The city budget is another.
Another.
Private fundraising or partnerships would be another. But to see if there's still community interest beyond the renew process for a project, is that kinda what you're?
Kind of, but like,
Okay.
let's just say that, I don't know right offhand where the indoor playground, which one of these it's sitting in right offhand, and let's just say that one went away. Can we put that in the aquatic center, just because maybe there'd be a room we could still manage to make it work? Or is that whole piece of the project scrapped because Renew didn't accept that actual document?
Well, I would answer it this way. I mean, the city of New Ulm has been adding and building projects long before we had a half-cent sales tax. So I think the simple answer is, if the community wants it, if it's part of the Park and Rec strategic plan and you're really pushing it, it'll get in the city budget. I think, is that fair, Tom?
I certainly agree that the city can do whatever the commissions and the council authorize and approve. And I think there certainly is an opportunity for massaging these projects, and we don't know exactly what's going to come out at the end. Back in '99, the ballot question did not say we're going to have 2 sheets of ice in the Civic Center. It said $9 million for recreational and community use improvements. It's kind of a broad general statement on myself, but.
But
So
that worked then, didn't it, because it was all recreational? But if we're looking at other areas to be considered, it's a little bit more, it seems like that the question's gonna be a little bit more identified. Unless it says
be.
so much.
Could be
would
rec center.
Yeah, or maybe it would say so much to be spent on Park and Rec projects and so much to be spent on the wording will make a difference, I understand. I just don't wanna lose some little things that might be included in this one as compared to another one, just in case.
Good point. Another comment I had, try to keep moving here, but if there's the opportunity to include pictures, sometimes that's how site visits help me, right? To walk into some of
Right,
these
you can see
facilities
what
and
you've
see
got.
them, and a picture doesn't do justice to the site visit and being there live in person. But sometimes a picture may help beyond what we can put together in a narrative and bullet points for what is a indoor multi-use turf facility or aquatic center. It doesn't mean this is the one we would be getting, but it at least for the audience that doesn't understand zero entry and some of the other terms we're getting used to, may be helpful.
I bet you have a few pictures.
I haven't.
That would be helpful, I
I took a
appreciate
few
that.
pictures from
No,
our
that's
site visit,
great.
all right.
That's great.
Third one was the playground. Tom, you want to outline that one?
Yes, the third proposal in draft form is a regional indoor year-round inclusive playground. Again, to serve all children and all abilities in an inclusive manner, and providing year-round benefits and year-round utilization, no matter what the weather is like outside.
I wanted to comment on this. I think this is, I see this two ways. Number one, this to me is something that is more, this is more what people want now. I think that's true. I'm not certain of that, but this wasn't something we did in the 50s, but this is something that more and more people that with children are looking for something. That's when I said there's something unique about it. I think that's it. And to your point, Jean, I think this is something that whether it gets through the renew process or not, should be something that our city is actively pushing to get someplace. I mean, I'm always amazed when I'm walking the track or just doing something, how many people will go down and bring their kids to that indoor space, which is really pretty primitive. I mean, there's all sorts of fun toys, but this is not a playground, but it's obviously something that a lot of people with young children want and need. And if we don't get it in the Renew project, I really would encourage, you know, I have only one vote on the city council. I don't know what the budget procedure is going to be, but this is something that I think we need. Those are my comments.
I would also like to point out in this proposal under description, which is number 3, letter B, Roman numeral 3 and 4, is that the facility could be used for individual children, also families, or groups of children, such as daycare businesses and organizations. Additionally, it provides a greater opportunity for bonding and interaction between parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and children.
Very true.
Maybe a question of some that would review this, Director Schmitz, and I think it varied based on our site visits, but the age cutoff. I think each of the facilities we went to didn't have an unlimited age acceptance in their playground. Some of them, I think the sign said 10 or 12, and others had 14, but they all had an age limit related to the wear and tear and other factors.
Social issues.
Any other comments or discussion on the playground proposal? The next one was Civic Center project?
Yes, a modest expansion of the Civic Center. Civic Center, I think we all realize, is already an existing regional facility. It was constructed with a regional thought, serves a wide region year-round, multi-use facility. But any of you who were involved with the planning back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we certainly had to scale it back. The building was smaller than our original scope and our original thought was. There's some HVAC components that weren't installed originally that we've had to add after the fact. And so some of this expansion were ideas that were thought about during the original design of the facility. More multi-purpose rooms, more space, more team rooms, locker rooms, fitness spaces, and multi-use spaces and rooms. So we have a preliminary concept of that already. One idea is a single-story expansion to the south towards 12th North Street of the South Arena, where the brick facade is, the lower first level of the facility, just to bump that out. You know, I have those those ideas, those concept plans available for anyone to view. I think it would greater serve the existing users and further entice other non-existing regional users of the facility.
The architect that designed that building is probably going berserk because he had a very specific vision of what that was supposed to look like, you know, but that.
We actually have the concepts from Victor Paciotti, the one of the original architects, so he's helping us.
Oh, all right,
Yeah,
good. Oh, thank you.
He's quite
All right.
supportive of this
Good.
and has it blending in as
And
if it were original.
Yeah, right, all right, good, thank you, thank you.
Any comments or discussion items for the Civic Center proposal? Okay, Tom, I think one more here, Johnson Miller Athletic Complex.
Yes, we're near completion of the conceptual master plan for Johnson Miller Regional Athletic Complex to include Johnson Park, Johnson Field, Miller Park, and the dormant soccer field in the lower portion of the area. And so there's a lot of elements and aspects to this conceptual master plan. And this proposal is going to request some local option sales tax funding to implement at least one of these elements. And you can see some of them down below here include a Miracle League inclusive multi-purpose field, grandstand improvements to any of the existing grandstands, especially the historic Johnson Baseball Park grandstand, possibly artificial turf on some or more than one of the fields, parking and accessibility additions and improvements, team room additions, fitness and training space, and possibly an athletic hall of fame museum space. So there's a number of different ideas. Again, this would better serve existing customers and entice future regional customers to come in baseball and football for certainly in those areas. We also do not have a Miracle League type field in the area. The nearest one is North Mankato. So not asking for complete funding of that conceptual master plan, which could take the entire local option sales tax budget, but possibly an opportunity to use a portion of the local option sales tax funding for implementing at least one element of that master plan.
I guess that would be maybe in follow-up to that, Director Schmitz, maybe one question I would have either for us or maybe at the next, as this would come through Renew Committee, if there's a master plan, and I'll throw it out there, let's just say the master plan, all of the elements as defined would be $15 million, whatever it may be. And you would be asking for funding. We would be proposing we only want a portion of that through the local option sales tax request process. Would it be tied to a specific component of that master plan? So it's the grandstands or the field or the bathroom facility or whatever, the restroom facilities, or how would you envision that happening so that the Park and Rec would know, well, what element of the Johnson Miller project are we proposing to have funded?
Yeah.
'Cause it obviously wouldn't be all of it, so which part of it?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the priority question. Which is the top priority, the highest priority? I think accessibility and visitor experience, spectator experience is very important. Although, you know, the player experience is extremely important also. And so we'd have to fine tune that at some point as far as determining exactly what element we want to focus on. I don't know if that would be in the referendum and in the referendum language, but we certainly could have a plan for where we would want to spend that money.
Thinking ahead, I just, if it's probably too broad, kind of more of the master plan, and this funding would, you know, fund 5% of the master plan, then thinking back to that criteria for the Renew Committee, it may be tough to hone in on how to evaluate that, if it could be the restrooms, or it could be artificial turf, or it could be the grandstand, or a Hall of Fame for that matter. So I guess I would be, if there's support here, I would be looking to what part of the master plan is the Park and Rec proposing to be funded from the local option sales tax.
Yeah, from this group, how would this group prioritize it as opposed to throwing it over to the Renew Committee and say, pick one of these to evaluate. The Herman Monument is a similar issue.
Wait, that's what I thought the next one was gonna come up, because the ones we've reviewed to date are kind of full and complete proposals to, we're envisioning at least, not one step of maybe a 7-step master plan. They were kind of complete.
And we have to make that decision today because it has to be in by the 28th, right?
I think the full proposal is what I would envision, but
Okay.
you know, maybe
Okay.
signaling in the letter of, the letter of interest, you know, here's the project we're looking at, still to be determined on where we would see the sales tax
Okay.
funding, but I do believe it would be helpful, at least I'd be recommending that we get a little more specific on the Johnson Park.
Mm-hmm.
None of these projects have dollars attached to them, not at this point.
The next.
That's part of the next step, but will you, as a Renew committee, be able to, I mean, it's hard to evaluate then how much of, like you say, how much of this, if you're only asking for a portion, yes, you could use it all up on here, or you could actually use it all up on any one of those, because it depends on how grandiose you get with any thought process. Do you think, like, the Renew committee might say you're limited to X amount of dollars on this project? Or, I mean, you know, you can keep on coming up with proposals and ideas, but there's dollars attached, and it's not gonna all happen. So even paring this one down, I don't know how you evaluate from the Renew committee standpoint, which ones of these can be considered because of the dollars that might be associated with them.
What's your plan?
Huh?
What's your plan?
I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
aren't you doing it as a two-step process?
We are.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
you're gonna just, some you're just gonna eliminate, you know?
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
yet on, you know, whether we'd be eliminating, but what we were interested in is sooner than later, which is why we had the kind of letter of intent. Phase one is to collect what are all of the ideas that are forming across the community for potential projects. Let's get those surfaced, get everybody at least used to, oh, somebody's interested in a water park, someone's interested in Johnson Park. And then also to see, is there any duplication or overlap? So
Okay.
are two groups thinking about a very similar project and they're both proposing, and now would be the time to redirect and say, how about you two get together? That could be a nice project together in the full proposal state in 2 months from now at the end of March. So there are some details we won't have this first phase of dollar amounts, cost estimates, scope of project, but I think for the prioritization piece in April and May, I'm only one member of that commission, but I would expect that detail will be helpful for that prioritization.
Okay.
Any more discussion on the Johnson Park complex proposal?
So do we have to narrow it down to what, if it is only supposed to be a portion, what portion is the priority, or not?
Well, I guess my recommendation, maybe just given the calendar and the timing of things, unless people are interested in working through that here, I don't feel equipped to prioritize. I mean, I look to
No,
Director Schmitz, and I'm guessing you're gonna maybe look to some user groups
Yeah,
of
exactly.
the complex to
Mhm.
help inform that. But
Mhm.
maybe if we tweak this to be a placeholder for the moment with Renew, and then kind
Mhm.
of set it on our agenda,
Mm-hmm.
could we refine it as we're moving it into a full proposal to kind of have some target areas?
Okay.
Is that
Yes,
sound
I
okay?
would agree, and, you know, a commission work session, the next commission work session might be important to further refine these, and then the next commission meeting, also.
Because we'll have 2 scheduled commission meetings before the deadline for the full proposal.
full proposal.
February and
Yes,
March.
February and March.
We can add work
Mhm.
sessions.
Yep.
Okay, you also had included for Herman Heights Park, that we come up
Yes.
with some sort of placeholder proposal for the phase 1.
Yes, I'm recommending that the commission authorize staff at this meeting here to put together a preliminary project proposal for implementing one or more elements of the Herman Heights Master Plan. And again, we don't have to decide what that's gonna be today, but you have in the packet the Herman Heights Conceptual Master Plan that was commissioned and completed in early of 2009. Some of the elements include restoration of the monument. Of course, the entire monument needs restoration except for the statue at top. Copper statue is just fine. But monument restoration is one. A massive infrastructure development is probably one of the early phases of that park's development, redevelopment plan. A possible relocation of Monument Street, and then, of course, the park entrance and the park plaza, the parking lot areas,
Yep.
and so on. Curb and gutter, sidewalk, storm sewer, all of that
Yep.
infrastructure phase.
Yeah, as a city councilor, I've been waiting for this to happen for a long time. You know, a different way to enter that space, you know, as opposed to getting halfway up the Center Street Hill and then, you know, turning in and having having two sides to move on, so.
Mm-hmm.
So you're moving forward with that. Didn't you tell me that you were meeting with the engineers?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're working on some preliminary conceptual engineering plans for that. But previously, we've also talked about how Herman Heights and Herman Monument, they're not only regional, but national or internationally renowned, significant, and that there are other funding sources for improvements at those facilities, including state bonding and special appropriation and even national appropriation. But I think it's important for those organizations and agencies to realize, to see that New Ulm has a commitment, that we've got a local commitment to move forward on this Parks Master Plan. And that might be something for the Renew Committee and the City Council and, of course, the Commission to think about. If we put some local option sales tax money into this, I think that may open doors more easily with other levels of government and other grant opportunities to help us further implement elements of the Herman Heights Park Master Plan.
Would Herman Heights or the monument be eligible for the legacy
Yes.
funding as well?
Yes,
So
state
one
legacy
could be
grants.
state funding from the legislature, others could be the legacy funding?
Yes, there could be legacy funding, bonding, state bonding funding. There could be special appropriation funding. But I think anyone else who might give us money for developments and improvements at Herman Heights, I think are going to be excited and happy to see a local support financially
Yep.
for developments and improvements up at the park.
And again, you know, speaking as a city councilor, I think the first thing is the infrastructure. You know, because I think it's real hard to get other people excited about just putting the sewer and water in a different place. It's something that really it's
Well, that's
more nuts
maybe
and
what-
bolts, you know.
Maybe what I was interested in, if we can have it come back as we're working on our proposal, is you included the master plan, you know, again, that was developed a number of years ago. But if we could actually kind of do a crosswalk of the elements of the master plan to the most appropriate funding sources. So to your point, maybe the local option sales tax proposal would be around infrastructure,
Right.
and maybe the legacy funding is around the monument structure itself, and
Right.
the, you know, and kind of piece it out that
Yeah.
what could get the legislature excited versus what
Right.
could get legacy
Right.
commissioners excited about, so you don't put curb and gutter in front of the legacy group.
Right.
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 Expect them to,
Mm-hmm.
does that make sense? That we could
Exactly,
actually
and
outline the
there's-
plan to funding sources so that
Yep.
our commission and maybe the Renew Committee could see the master plan along with the master fundraising plan.
Yeah. And some people locally have been thinking about the infrastructure aspect of the local option sales tax. Is that, you know, gonna be a roundabout or, you know, sewers or what? Maybe this could be the infrastructure element of Renew, in that it's Monument Street, it's curb and gutter, it's sewer, and so on.
So action you're looking for today related to the Herman Heights would be to at least authorize staff to bring back a proposal?
Well, to
Or actually to submit a
that,
proposal,
To submit the
Because we won't meet again before that, okay.
initial letter of intent for improvements at Herman Heights Park.
With more definition to come in the full proposal?
Yes.
Of. Okay,
I would certainly make that motion that we get
Yeah,
ready
to
for that.
finalize. Yeah.
I'll second that.
so we have a motion and a second to authorize staff to formalize a proposal to submit to the Renew Committee?
Yes,
Is that
yes.
what we were motioning second? Any more discussion?
Thank you. That's a lot of work. Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Looking at the action sheet Director Schmitz, are you needing any other action of the commission today related to the other proposals? Or I saw you had.
Oh, yeah,
Or are
certainly.
we okay with what
I
we
think-
authorized last meeting?
Authorize staff to finalize the preliminary on those first 5 and get it in by the deadline. So yeah, that would be another action item, please.
So moved?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and second to finalize the preliminary project proposals for Renew at the deadline of January 26th. Any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We didn't include any new business items today. Let me pause. Thank you for the discussion and the time kind of invested in that process. Right, this won't come around but every 20 years, so thank you for your extra attention and engagement today. Reports, Director Schmitz.
Thank you, Chair Fryer and Commissioners. I am not going to read any of this information into the record here. It's all in the agenda. There's been a number of projects completed since our last meeting. Continue to have them a group in progress in which purchase orders have been issued, and then a big chunk still in the planning phase. So the only real announcements I would like to make are that the brochure has come out and registration began today, 10 a.m. online, with credit cards being accepted.
And I have another addition to that. So the registration started at 10, and when I looked at 3, we had registered about just under $6,800 worth of programs. Last few
Good
hours.
job.
So I think that's all we have from the staff announcement and update standpoint.
Okay. Down to commissioner reports.
Toby,
Yeah,
I just have
Commissioner
one
Winston.
thing.
Yeah.
This isn't like a formal report, but Goostown, there's a Friends of Goostown group that's sort of organizing. It's not a formal group, it's an informal group. But Tom made a presentation with regard to the Minnesota River Regional Parkway to that group, and I was in attendance, and there's quite a bit of discussion about that. And then there was a follow-up meeting that Tom did not attend, and one of the topics was the possibility of another neighborhood park. And I'm not sure what level of interest would ultimately come forward. But many of the comments that people were making, as I said, it's not a formal group. It wasn't an all in favor, say aye or something like that. But many of the comments were around, we have a beautiful Riverside Park. We'd like it taken care of more before we add more parkland. So I think I just want to say that because I was the only one that was there. It's just something I think we have to stay alert to, is what are people really looking for. I can't answer that question, but I know it's being discussed. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner reports? Yes, the only update I would share or question to the commissioners would be, do you feel like with what we have going on and kind of the renew process and others that we should try to schedule a work session before our next Park and Rec Commission meeting the second Monday of February? How's the group feeling about waiting until our regular meeting, or maybe a few weeks out looking at adding a work session?
Sounds to me like a work session might be appropriate.
Yeah.
Again, it's not to take formal action, as we know, but if there's support for that, we'll try to look at the calendar maybe for the next 2 months, and whether we need one or not, at least get a placeholder on the calendar, so.
My personal feeling was I'd like to see what I'd like to have a work session after we see what the
The initial
renew
proposals?
after what that would be. That would give us something to really
Yeah.
chew on. I'd like to hear your report on that.
Okay.
That's just my thought.
Okay. Any other reports or business today for our meeting? If not, as indicated on our agenda, the next meeting will be February 8th here at 4 p.m. Thanks again for great attendance today and engagement discussion. Appreciate it. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.